Hello and welcome to FDT-TV. I got it right. This is the first take as well. I'm super happy about that. Yes, we are back with the episode 8. What a weekend of football. Some highs, some lows, some not so very good moments. Ian, let me start. I'm joined by Ian. How you doing? How's your week been?
Yeah, all right. I feel a bit cheated, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But as does half the Premier League at this point. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it was there was some entertaining games out there this weekend, but just not fairly officiated.
No, and we can obviously come on to that very shortly. I think if we start off with a roundup of your grievances from your fixture, we'll start off with West Ham versus Chelsea. I think it was.
It was.
In fact, we had 2 games, but we're just focused on the weekend's games at the moment, and we can touch back on the other scores a little bit later on. So West Ham, Chelsea.
So obviously, we all know that it was a bit of a scrappy game. There was a couple of challenges in there which were yellow cards that weren't given, as is always. But the big talking point was Maxwell Cornet scored the equaliser. Rightfully so, scored the equaliser, and it was ruled for a foul on Jared Bowen on Edward Mendy. So essentially, for those who haven't seen it, Edward Mendy, as is his case in a minute, spilled the ball out quite a way, lost control. Jared Bowen jumped over him. His trailing toenail clipped his elbow, and he stayed on the floor rolling around like he'd been stamped on his shoulder. So it wasn't even the place of contact. It wasn't much contact. But Maxwell Cornet, Chelsea pinged the ball out. Maxwell Cornet picked it up, pushed it onto his right foot, curled it in the top bins. 4 minutes later, they've sent the ref to go and look at it, and they've given it as a foul on Edward Mendy, which it wasn't, and everyone can say it wasn't. What I think they should have done with it, if I'm totally honest, and it would still be an incorrect decision, but it would have more grounds to have a reasonable argument built on it, was that Jared Bowen was fractionally offside. Now, I can't say for definite that he was or he wasn't, but to me, that's what I thought they were going to look at to start off with, because I was like, that initial play, it's a very, very close one. It's one of those that would be like completely marginal. And I thought that would have more of an argument to say he's offside rather than he's fouled the goalkeeper. But obviously Declan Rice has come out on Twitter and said it's ridiculous. David Moyes has said it's ridiculous. And that he's lost faith completely in any form of VAR and the referee and official, so he'll probably get a fine. But what they have done is that decision, along with the one from the Newcastle game, they could have done it with all the decisions really, because this week was absolutely diabolical for officiating, and it's the worst that VAR has been. We're now in year 4, I want to say, and it's worse than it was when they first brought it in. Obviously, they've tried to make the Premier League a little bit more physical, but it's not happened. It's happening on most of the time. It's the senior officials who seem to be getting it wrong. So essentially they've asked the PGMOL, which is the officiating body for professional referees, to look at it and comment, because the standard of it is not good enough. And they've said, yeah, that was really wrong. It doesn't bring us back a point. So, and same with the Newcastle Crystal Palace game. That point could be a difference between a European place, a relegation, whatever it may be. They've said it's wrong. So at which point, the Premier League's going to be open to being sued now? Why not say, yes, it was wrong, that goal should have stood 2-2? And same with the Newcastle Crystal Palace game. That goal should have stood, put it back in place. Okay, you can't then say, oh, well, it had 20 minutes to play, it had 10 minutes to play, whatever it was. There could have been a different outcome. But you said it's wrong. There's no repercussion for the ref. There's no repercussion for the VAR. And in our case, surely Edward Mendy should be retrospectively banned for simulation, because he's cheated and he's fooled the ref into thinking he's been injured by Jared Bowen, and he's not. He got up and was fine afterwards. So surely that's like dishonourable sportsmanship or whatever you want to call it, and he should be looked at and banned retrospectively. mean, Chelsea would probably do better without him in goal at the minute, but that's not the point.
No.
They've said that it's wrong. They've said they made a mistake and they've called the wrong thing, and there's no repercussion. So that means it don't matter.
Yeah, to be honest, it's something that we've spoken about at length on this particular channel, just in terms of VAR and the standard of officiating within the Premier League. It's been a shambles, and I think you mentioned someone a couple of years ago that you were speaking to, where they said, or they were talking about the VAR in European football. I think it was in the German league, possibly, and they said by season 3, it should be working fine. We're now, as you said, into season 4, well underway in season 4 now, and like you mentioned, it was possibly the worst weekend that we've seen. I mean, we've seen some absolutely shonky decisions that have been made by VAR, but this has by far been the most absurd that it's been since it's been in place.
Yeah.
I can't remember looking back at a weekend of football across the entire league. I'm wondering how have they made that many decisions. I think it's at least 5 or 6 that are the well-known ones across the course of this weekend.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on a couple more in a bit. But the thing that I do find frustrating, and I kind of understand from what you just said, obviously whether it was a potentially a game-changing moment, i.e. there's 1 minute to go, and it's an equaliser or a goal to take you to a win. It's unlikely, not impossible, but it's unlikely to change the course of the game.
Yeah.
However, like you said, like you just mentioned, that could be the difference between extra money from European football going down through relegation, or it has all sorts of repercussions. And I think it's completely unfair that these officials are getting away with it. It's almost like it's not even almost like they are untouchable.
Yeah.
You get suspensions or fines if you mention anything disrespecting them after the game.
Yep.
And you could be off the back of one of those game-changing decisions, and you can't say nothing about it because you'll come out and you'll be banned, or you'll get a fine, or etc. etc. And I think that's really unfair. Just one of the examples I wanted to bring up was obviously in relation to the Arsenal game. Now, unfortunately I didn't actually get to watch the match yesterday, but I have obviously watched the highlights since, and I'm kind of to and fro from the decision. So obviously saw that we went 1-0 up with Martinelli scoring an absolute blinding goal. I think it was on or around the 14th minute, but it got checked through VAR because of a potential foul on Christian Eriksen. Now, having looked back at the foul, I'm still in two minds about what I think of this. Now, obviously, there's the Arsenal fan side of me is like, no, shouldn't have been it shouldn't be disallowed. They've encouraged the game to be a lot more physical recently, or especially in the season. But it seems to be completely the opposite if it's anything that we're doing.
Yep.
I know it's not specifically just Arsenal, but there are obviously other occasions. However, I can obviously only comment on the ones that I see on a week in, week out basis. But at the same time, if that was against me, I'd be fuming because it wasn't given. Do you know what I mean? So, for those of you who haven't seen it, Martin Odegaard was a little bit more physical, I think is the best way to say this. Dispossessed Christian Eriksen, brilliant through ball to Martinelli, sorry.
Yep.
And he slotted away. Nice little cheeky chip finish. But when watching Ref Watch, 3 out of the 4 people, now bear in mind one of them's the head of the PGMOL or whatever it is, Dermot Gallagher.
Yep.
He gave his bullshit reason, excuse my language, as to why this foul was given. But what I found interesting is that the other 3 people, the Sky Sports people, all come out and said, well, is it a clear and obvious error? And they said no, or one of them said, no, it's not clear and obvious, you should have just let it play on. One of them said, I thought it was a foul, but when you look at social media and people, and then obviously that subject is open for a debate, you've got 50-50-ish people arguing against it. Now, he said there's a caveat behind that because obviously it could be inflated due to Man United supporters and Arsenal supporters, etc. However, he said through the majority of the comments that he had seen were from neutrals.
Yep.
And what his argument was is that if it's not clear and obvious to people that are watching it, even the pundits, obviously you're going to have your likes of Gary Neville that's biased towards Manchester United, but if it's not clear and obvious to Joe Public, how can they make that distinction that it is an obvious error, that the foul has been missed?
Yeah.
And where do you draw the lines of physicality? Because we've seen a lot more challenges recently that go unnoticed or waved on or whatever. And I can think of one specific example where you see is it Cucurella from Chelsea get his hair absolutely ripped out of his head and no retrospective action done on that. Yet their goal stood. We had Aaron Ramsdale impeded last week against Aston Villa for a corner. No retrospective or no action taken on that when he's being physically held.
Yep.
And what they were saying is, no, standing his ground. No, you can't. You stand your ground by all means. But what you don't do is then put your arms around your goalkeeper, impeding their movement.
Yeah. In the same game, you had Harry Maguire took down Saka. The ball had gone.
Yeah.
He grabbed him and slammed him to the floor. Like, where's the look at that?
And again, Aston Villa, when you had was it Tyrone Mings threw Bukayo Saka to the floor.
Yep.
Was Saka's shielding the ball. I think what the point I'm trying to make at is the level of consistency. You wouldn't mind if that foul was committed and let's say, for argument's sake, 9 times out of 10 it was given. But it's not. It's 50% of the time. Sometimes the fouls are being given, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
And I think it's the lack of consistency which is frustrating a lot of supporters. There are obviously a lot of people who go to the games, they pay their hard-earned money to go and watch their team play football. And yet they're being cheated out through some ridiculous decision. And this is what I've said before, is that it's subjective. I could look at that foul and I could look at those incidents and go, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And one of the other ones that they were talking about was Joe Willock.
Yep.
For Newcastle, being pushed, I think, by Mitchell from Crystal Palace.
Yep.
Into
the goalkeeper.
Who? Sorry.
It was into the goalkeeper, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So, and they were saying that that's a foul. Well, had you looked at that that incident in isolation, you could see it as a foul. But the only reason he's committed a foul is because he's been pushed. Therefore, he should have had a penalty. And now again, just looking at what the comments they were saying on RefWatch, is that it took the punditry team a whole host of people to look at that incident and go, no, there's a foul on Joe Willock here, that should be a penalty, or the goal should stand. Yet that was completely missed by the officials, and I think it's absolutely disgusting. So I'm so sick of VAR.
So there's a few things you've mentioned there I would just like to pick up on. So the level of consistency, I think they have become consistent, especially this weekend, just with awful decisions. So they've picked up on we need to be more consistent, so let's get it wrong more often. Obviously, a little bit of a joke there. We don't want it to continue like that. The bit that gets me with the Odegaard one is, so you mentioned the level of physicality and what's being allowed this year, and I think that it should have been let go. As you said, it wasn't clear and obvious that it was a foul. To start off with, Gary Neville did say, like on the commentary, he's like, "Oh no, that's not foul," and then obviously we know they can hear what the VAR are saying. So then he's gone, "Oh, but there's no contact," so that's why they're looking at it. If Odegaard had got a toe on it, would it have been a foul? Don't know. But there were worse, or exactly the same, or worse contacts that weren't blown up as fouls. So I think it's you've been hard done by there. The last thing I was going to say is I think now it's time for them to scrap it. Mm-hmm. They can't get it right. So they need to scrap it and go back to it being the occasional error, because it was before you did get errors. If we had VAR, we'd be able to look at it, that wasn't offside. But yeah, it's so bad now, and it falls into the category. And I don't want to say it and I'll go into my reasoning. What I do want to say is match fixing is rife within the Premier League, and people go, well, you can't match fix it. You can't match fix in the Premier League. It happens every other league. Premier League's the only one it's not been caught in. So the instance we'll look at, obviously Newcastle, Crystal Palace is one you mentioned. West Ham, Chelsea. Obviously, the big teams, all these decisions have gone for big teams or teams with lots of money at the minute. And I'm not saying that the club themselves are funding these decisions, but marketability. So Chelsea were squirming mid-table. Liverpool were sort of bottom half of that mid-table. Manchester United, okay, they've had a little bit of a revival, but we're still mid-table. All these big marketable clubs, and Manchester City is another one, who were flying last year, not really so much this year. And that's the reason I think the decision went against you, because Arsenal is, I would call, a marketable club, but you were at the top of the Premier League, unbeaten at the time. So, obviously, Coutinho wasn't offside, flagged for offside. He scored the goal because the referee blew. Why is that being flagged for offside? I think that was Mike Dean who actually flagged it for offside. But I don't know. It was a bloke who looked like him if it wasn't Mike Dean himself being the linesman. But again, that goal put Liverpool up the table with another win. Van Dijk should have seen red in that game as well. Didn't even get anything. Mm-hmm. The goal against... Oh, sorry, that was the Man City game. Van Dijk should have got a red card in his game, because the Coutinho goal was against Manchester City.
Yep.
In a Liverpool-Everton game, Van Dijk should have been sent off. Okay, it was later on in the game, but he still should have been sent off. And Cody's goal was not offside. The line, when you looked at it, I showed the missus, it was bent. It come in a V to make him offside. And you go, well, you can't do that. That's just clearly wrong. He was onside by about 2 foot, and as I said, all the decisions went from Manchester United. And okay, although there were moments they beat you in the game, they were a bit more clinical. You should have had at least 2 penalties from Harry Maguire coming on, who should have been sent off for 2 yellows. The first goal should have stood. So then that makes it what, 3-all, 4-3? I don't know. If you score those penalties, but it's all gone for teams that are marketable but are not doing well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's all match fixed. And the reason they won't do it is because that means all of those people are implicated. The PGMOL will be implicated, the FA will be implicated, and FIFA will be. Well, we already know FIFA's corrupt. They've been done for it several times. So why is the FA and the PGML not corrupt? Mm. Why is that never happened? There's never in the Premier League, and I say this over and over again. Every other league in the world, even in English leagues, has been match fixing found. The Premier League, which is now 30 years old, has never had any form of match fixing, which is bollocks. I'm sorry, it's bollocks. There is money to be made there. There is millions to be made, and no one is corrupted at all. There's not even a slight turn of an eye on a challenge, and it winds me up.
Again, I can't argue with anything you're saying there. Do you know what? I suppose it was one of those things when you look at, because this is not the first time you've said this. No. And the first time you said this, I was like, I've got to be honest, I was one of those naive people that have gone, yeah, well, if there was something, they would have found it out ages ago. But the more and more you say it, and the more incidents that come up, the more you've got to believe it.
They're all for the big teams.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the only saving grace for us at this weekend, I mean, granted, I'm not expecting us to win every match. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, that going the entire season as an invincible again, I don't think we'll ever see, certainly in our lifetime. Not unless there's one of these ridiculous rule changes where basically clubs can pump every pound into signing the most elite squad of ex-player, whatever. I don't think we'll ever see it again. So I suppose the only thing that I was frustrated about that was, again, just a lack of consistency for the decisions. And it is extremely frustrating. But for the 2 goals that were given, for all 3 of Manchester United goals, I can't argue about them. Do you know what I mean? They were great goals. They were a lot more clinical, and fair play to them. It's just, I think, for some of those decisions that went against us, you just start thinking, well, what's the fucking point? And I think that game for me is by certain. It's frustrating because it's a loss. No one likes to see their team lose. For the manner of the game, I think we dominated the majority of the game and were just ripped open by classic counter-attacking football. We have seen some defensive frailties, and it's not going to be the only time that we do see defensive frailties from our team. But I think some people need to have like a bit of a reality check in terms of the fact that there are going to be times that we concede and there are going to be times that we are going to lose. But we're still sitting on top of the league at the moment, so people need to just chill out a little bit.
If I'm honest, I think with your loss, obviously you can attribute some of it potentially to VAR. I think Mikel Arteta has to take that one on the chin. Yep. I don't think that was the team's fault. I think that was his fault. The substitutes he made a triple substitution, and it changed your whole team, and
yep.
your dominance went out the window, and that's when they scored those 2 goals. And it was just, I think that he has to put his hands up and go, that was my mistake. That was nothing to do with the team, how they played. That was my mistake. I got that decision wrong. I don't think the Arteta out crowd will jump on it, but I think for that loss, he has to take account or be accountable for it. Because I think you could have walked away with at least a draw. You may have nicked something towards the end, but say that those substitutions changed the whole attitude of the team.
Yeah, and you're not the only one to say that. I think it's a lot of the things I've been reading on social media. As I said, I've only seen the highlights of the game, so I can't really comment on that. But that seems to be the general consensus amongst Arsenal fans. I mean, like I said, sitting at the top of the table, 5 wins out of 6.
If someone had offered it to you at the beginning of the season, you'd have bitten their hand off, wouldn't you?
Exactly, but you've already started seeing, from one loss, you started seeing the Arteta out brigade rearing their ugly head, and they can all fuck off and die if I can. But yeah, obviously not die, because we don't condone that on this channel.
Just really hurt themselves.
Yes, definitely.
Sleep in the shower or something.
So one other game I do want to just quickly mention was the Liverpool-Everton game.
Yep.
Obviously, we just talked about the controversies within that game, obviously with Van Dijk with his red card and the chalked-off goal. But I just want to say, from a neutral's perspective, what an entertaining game of football that was for a 0-0 draw. It was absolutely spectacular. End-to-end stuff. Liverpool, I think, had definitely got away with one. And I don't know what's happened at Liverpool. Well, we do know what's happened at Liverpool. Mane's gone, but I can't believe it, that losing one player such as him. I mean, he was quality, don't get me wrong, but I fail to believe that just from one player, it's had that much of a knock-on effect.
It's his selflessness.
Yeah,
that's what's changed. He's selfish. Now, we did mention about Asthmagate, didn't we?
Yep.
And I sent a funny thing the other day, which I've seen. So Liverpool has done obviously all their medical stuff with their new signing, Darwin Núñez, who has never had asthma before in his life. He's joined Liverpool and now has asthma.
Maybe it's the air in Liverpool. I mean, we have been up there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just. I think that's the next big sporting scandal. We had like sort of deflate gate in the NFL, and there's been a lot of things about Sepp Blatter, and the next big scandal is gonna be Liverpool and asthma. It's got to be. At some point, it's all going to come falling down, and the fact that it's Jurgen Klopp's 7th season, which he never seems to do particularly well in at any club. It's a bit like Mourinho. If you get to that 3rd season, oh well, you're in for a treat, aren't you? It's
You get to your semi-final and then get sacked.
exactly.
Right, so just moving on now. Every week we do predictions within within this channel, where we take a look at the upcoming fixtures in the Premier League, predict our scores, and Ian is now demonstrating the lovely FIFA Day Trophy predictions trophy. So yes, we had four fixtures to predict last week.
Did we?
Obviously, it was a bit of a double header. So just recapping those, we had Arsenal versus Aston Villa, West Ham versus Tottenham, Chelsea West Ham, and then Man U Arsenal. Right, you had 4-0 to Arsenal, and I had 4-1 to Arsenal against Aston Villa. The score was 2-1, so it's a point each because we got the correct result, not the correct score. West Ham versus Tottenham, you had 2-0 to West Ham, and I had 2-2. The score was 1-1, therefore I get a point and you don't get anything. Chelsea West Ham, you had 3-1 to Chelsea, I had 2-1 to Chelsea. The score was 2-1, therefore you get a point, I get 3. Man United versus Arsenal, you had 1-1, I had 2-1 to Arsenal. The score was 3-1 to Manchester United, so 0 points for that round. So the total scores for this week, Ian, you're on 2 points and I am on 5. That takes the season's totals.
It's got to be drawn or even, isn't it?
Many thought I was dead and buried. I even thought I was dead and buried. But Ian, you are currently on 16 points, and I am on 15.
Hey!
So still 1 point in it. But I'm glad I've managed to close that gap. And just whilst we're on the subject of this, the Premier League has seen its first managerial dismissal.
Scotty Parker.
Yes, sacked from Bournemouth last weekend or last week after their 9-0 drubbing against Manchester City.
But I don't think he would have been sacked. I think he was sacked because of that post-match interview where he said, well, the board haven't backed me at all.
Yep.
We're not equipped. If he'd kept his mouth shut and gone and done that behind closed doors, he'd still be in a job. Brendan Rodgers, I think, may be his favourite. If you had beaten Aston Villa a bit more convincingly, I think Gerrard would have walked. But I think this weekend, because I think Leicester play Aston Villa, whoever loses that match is gone. And it wouldn't surprise me if Brendan Rodgers already had been sacked at the weekend after that display at Brighton, and they'd gone to Bournemouth.
Well, so that brings us very quickly onto the sack race. Obviously, you mentioned Steven Gerrard, and I mentioned Frank Lampard within that. Now, obviously, Scott Parker's already gone.
Yep.
Do we now just keep those names in for a bonus point just to see who gets sacked first out of those two, or do we just completely scrub that off now?
I think keep it in. Keep it in.
Yeah?
Yeah, keep it in.
And then we can obviously... Whoever gets sacked out of Gerrard on
whoever gets sacked first?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Right, looking on to this week's fixtures, we have Arsenal take on Everton and West Ham take on Newcastle. I'm also going to throw in a bonus game for this week because it's a fairly high-profile game. Manchester City take on Tottenham at the Etihad. So... First game up in alphabetical order. Both of these are 2 o'clock kickoffs. Arsenal take on Everton at home. Now, looking at the transfer window, Everton made some good signings. Just Gay come back from PSG, and there was a couple of others. And against Liverpool, I've got to say, they looked really good. Now, I'm hoping that we're going to have the home advantage on this one. I do think we are going to concede first on this one. But I think after this particular fixture, we're going to be proper up for this. Obviously, we're playing in our manner. I'm going to go for Arsenal 3, Everton 1 on this one.
Ooh, go on.
I was just going to say, I do think we'll see a few rotations within this, because obviously we've started to pick up injuries, etc. But I do think we are going to be proper up for this one. So yeah, I'm going to go 3-1.
I've gone the other way. I mean, if Jordan Pickford plays like that, then he does, like all season, he deserves that number 1 jersey for England. I will admit that. We were saying he shouldn't be in the squad at the minute, but if he continues to play like that, fair play to him. I'm going to go on the basis that your heads are going to drop a little bit. Arteta's going to train you hard because actually that wasn't good enough. There was some mistakes. It wasn't good enough over 90 minutes. There was only patches. And I'm going to go on the basis that that result at Everton is as good as a win. They should have won. But I'm going to go, those spirits will be lifted. I'm going 1-0 Everton.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I just they always have seemed to be a little bit of a bogey team. I think you'll overestimate them a little bit, or underestimate them a little bit, and they'll just Anthony Gordon will nick something, or Neil Mopai will come back and haunt Guendouzi's spirit.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's a fair point. Like I said, I mean, he looked phenomenal. I know he kind of fell out of favour at Brighton, but I think that's a great signing because he looked really up for the game. I don't want us to kind of like the rails to come or us to be derailed already this early into the season.
Yeah.
Again, I know we've got some injuries to worry about, and I think I read something that Thomas Partey might actually be back in full training this week anyway, in which case that will be kind of like the missing link that we've missed over certainly the last 2 games. So,
I think if Partey starts, you'll win it. If he doesn't, then I think you're gonna lose it. And the reason I say that is I think you'll be dominant throughout, but if it's not going the right way, I think there will be pockets within that stadium that will start to turn, and as it does at West Ham, that makes it a lot harder to do anything.
Yep, agreed. Okay, so West Ham, Newcastle, what's your thoughts?
Not a game I'm looking forward to. I will admit that they've beat us in the last couple of seasons, and actually they look phenomenal this year. And when you, this is the hard thing, because when you look on paper, we should have beat Tottenham. We could have been banging on the door all day, and it just wouldn't have happened. We've come back to life a little bit. That Paqueta looks mustard, and the fact that Newcastle have been really, really good, I think we'll win 2-1. Because it's the sort of game everyone goes, oh, we're not going to get this. Is going to be horrible for us, and that's usually where we pull out a result. We'll play Everton the week after and lose, but for this one, I reckon we'll pull out a 2-1 victory.
I've gone the opposite way, literally the opposite way. I've gone for 2-1 Newcastle. I think over the course of the last 2 performances and against Tottenham and Chelsea, I do think you were unlucky. Certainly against Chelsea, you were definitely robbed of a point there, at least a point. But I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from Newcastle at the moment. Really enjoying what I'm seeing, and I think they may have too much for you, even playing away. I'd like to be proved wrong. Obviously, I've got a little soft spot for West Ham, so I'm going to go for 2-1 to Newcastle.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me, that result, but that's what I think, because everyone's thinking we're going to lose. And I think a majority of the West Ham fans are sort of resigned to the fact that we're probably not going to get anything out of this game. But it's the only reason I've gone for us to win.
Okay, so and just finally, Manchester City versus Tottenham at the Etihad.
Do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah.
I don't think... I mean, Conte, I think out of the last 6 seasons where he's been manager, he's won 5 titles. But Tottenham are lacking. Richarlison is playing well for them, but he's getting a bit tricky, and City didn't play as well as they should have, and Kyle Walker should have played through Haaland, who should have a ridiculous amount of goals already. He could have had 4 more goals this season if his team had passed to him. Open goals. So for that reason, I'm going to go for City to win 3-1.
Okay. I'm going to go on this basis that I think City have got amazing quality. Spurs are grinding out results, grinding out goals. I think we could see potentially a couple more VAR controversies within this game. or there's going to be, in fact, yeah, VAR controversy is like a Harry Kane offside or something, but gets the goal or trips over a blade of grass that was remotely near Kyle Walker and ends up getting a penalty. So I'm going to go for a Manchester City win on this one. I'm going to go for 3-2.
Ooh. Ooh, close one. Close one.
Yes.
I think if you're listening, you should let us know on the comments of the YouTube channel what you think the results of those 3 games are going to be. So that's Arsenal versus Everton, West Ham versus Newcastle, and City versus Spurs.
Yes. Have you got anything else you want to mention?
Fuck the refs.
Yes.
Fuck the refs. Fuck them.
Completely agree. I don't know about you, mate. I've got nothing else I want to say.
A part of me wants to sort of run along the pitch like non-league game. Do you want to wear these, mate? Do you want to wear these? But,
they might actually work.
Yeah, they need to clean, but they're still better than... I reckon I could officiate a game better without them on than the current referees are doing now. But, yeah, so it's all fun and games, but, yeah, nothing to add, really. Not without getting myself in trouble.
No. Absolutely. Well, in which case then, thank you very much for watching. If you have got this far, we really do appreciate it. If you have liked it, please hit that like and subscribe button. Click the notifications for more content coming. Obviously, we do our weekly predictions videos as well for upcoming Premier Leagues games. But yeah, until then, I've been Mike.
I've been Ian.
And thank you very much for watching.
See you later. Goodbye.